Because imagine if you are a C-level person today at a company, you have this damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Everybody's doing AI. So if you don't do AI, your board is going to be like asking you this question every board meeting. If you do AI, you're like, I don't quite know where to start, how to start, what to expect, which is the right problem, what ROI should I get? And so you don't want to like over invest unless you have a good sense of what to expect out of this whole thing. And so you have to find a way to, because people are so motivated to do something, get them in a direction where they can do something, but they have a very high degree of confidence when they take that first step that they're going to be rewarded with a good business outcome.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, five-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where AI solutions for enterprises aren't just buzzwords. They are the tools turning slow processes into smart moves and big data into bigger wins. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. What if you could build SaaS and AI solutions with zero code and zero hand-holding from a data team? If you'd asked me a couple of years ago if that was possible, I would have said it's crazy. It's a dream because I'm non-technical, but just absolutely impossible. And that's still true for many businesses. Data science still feels like something reserved for well-funded tech giants or teams of PhDs, but that mindset is quickly becoming outdated. This episode explores how AI is being democratized, making it possible for anyone, even me, not just engineers, to solve complex problems using natural language and real time insights. We unpack the shift from building tools to delivering outcomes, where success isn't measured by lines of code, but by impact. You'll hear how a new generation of platforms is bridging the gap between business intuition and machine intelligence, helping teams move fast without adding headcount or complexity. And adding headcount, I promise you, adds both. This conversation also highlights the realities of startup life, especially the hard won lessons from early missteps to product market clarity. And for leaders sitting on valuable data but unsure how to use it, there is a clear path forward. So stop chasing trends and start listening to what your business actually needs. If you've ever felt locked out of AI or other solutions because it seemed too technical, too expensive, or maybe too abstract, this episode will change your mind. Let's dive in. Our expert guest last Thursday was Patricia Fripp, the Hall of Fame speech coach behind some of the most persuasive sales teams in the world. Patricia gave us a masterclass in how to speak like a leader, from personal storytelling to killer structure. She showed us why communication isn't a soft skill, it's your sales weapon. And our founder last week was Andrew Seidman, co founder and go to market strategist. He walked us through how great brands win in crowded markets. Anybody in one of those? He connected the dots between product led growth, account based marketing, and customer advocacy, and then explain why emotional leverage is the key to strategic growth. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and check them out. Really great stuff there. My guest today is Rahul Pangam, a CEO and co founder of RapidCanvas. Rahul is on a mission to put the power of machine learning into the hands of business users. No code, no jargon, just outcomes. Isn't that beautiful? He shares the mindset shifts required to move from systems of record to systems of intelligence. RapidCanvas enables decision makers to turn messy enterprise data into actionable insights without bottlenecks or handoffs. Welcome, Rahul Pangam. Hey, Rahul, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me.
You've been behind some incredible AI driven companies from Simile to PayPal and now RapidCanvas. Walk me through your journey and how it led you to this latest venture.
Yeah, it almost seems like AI is in this sort of public conscience for the last 2, 3 years,
Yes.
but it's been around with us for a long time, right? Almost since the 70s, people have been using some kind of modeling, algorithmic techniques for predictive analytics, and so on and so forth. My journey with data science and AI started back in 2007. And I joined Google, and I was a part of this team, which is now called Trust and Safety. So you look at patterns in user behavior and find anomalous patterns, which can be called fraud or abuse or some kind of violation of the product terms, right?
Sure.
And what we realize is, like, we should Google, right? Large network, lots of searches, lots of ads. Like, you can't have people sit down and look for these patterns, right, manually. So you had to find ways
Right.
to scale. And then the way we did that was using machine learning, data science techniques. But you had to have a combination approach, right? The individuals trying to understand these behaviors, user behaviors, had to be good at understanding social engineering and user behavior. So they weren't engineers, right? They were people who were looking at patterns, looking at how the products were being used, and coming up with some thesis of what could be good behavior versus bad behavior. Now, because they weren't data scientists or engineers, how do you help them scale, give them self-service tools that don't require coding or don't require them to have data science expertise? So this
Mm.
was my first foray into, and I was managing that team. So this was my first foray into not just AI, but like, how can AI, machine learning, data science be used by individuals who are not trained in software engineering or data science? Because I think that's the big part about AI
Yeah.
now. It's not like AI is new, but AI is now accessible to a lot more people than it used to before.
Yes.
And that's the interesting part about this sort of latest inflection point since ChatGPT of AI. So that was my introduction to this. How can operational teams, business teams benefit from data science and artificial intelligence techniques without being deep experts in engineering and data science? Learned a lot there, and then started my previous startup, which was Simility. Again, a lot of it was, how do you help fraud teams at financial institutions identify fraud, like check fraud or account fraud?
Sure.
Yeah, and these teams forever had been in this notion of writing rules, right? If a check is greater than $5,000 and for this account a check of this size had never been written, block it, right? So they would
Right.
actually encode these rules based on real behavior. And over time, they had built like 300, 500, 700 and rules, right? And at some point, you lose track of what are you trying to block and what are you trying to let go. And the way to
Exactly.
scale was use data science techniques to rationalize the number of rules, and how do you find the right thresholds and the right number of behaviors and all. But again, the individuals at these financial institutions who had the domain knowledge weren't data scientists. So it was very beneficial if the same individuals could benefit from the data science and AI tools, rather than hiring data scientists who did not have this 20 years of experience of what is and isn't fraud. And so I carried that theme over into Simility and enabled these financial institutions to benefit from AI without hiring like armies of data scientists, right? Taking their existing teams and upskilling them to benefit from AI. Interestingly, PayPal was one of our customers who then ended up acquiring our company because they were the largest customer and largest beneficiary of the work we were doing and the intellectual property and the technology that we were using. So I spent 3 years at PayPal taking what we had built and scaling it to like almost 20x in those 3 years.
Wow.
And it was an interesting journey, right? Scaling something that you're in an early stage startup and like going full fledged at PayPal scale, but learned a lot in that journey. And then when the generative AI wave came along, early days, ChatGPT 2 and prior to that, it was becoming pretty obvious that there is going to be a massive explosion in the number of areas that AI can be beneficial. And I left PayPal and started RapidCanvas, right? When that became super apparent. And Now looking back, like it is even more like what I thought would be the sort of inflection point and how popular AI would become to everybody else who was not day to day in that in the previous iteration of AI. It's probably like an order of magnitude bigger than what I even thought.
Yes. And
Crazy.
still growing.
And still growing, right? And it's a global phenomenon, right? Like no matter what, where you live, unless you're living under a rock, everybody is in some way, shape, or form touching AI today.
Yes, that's correct. And so, how does RapidCanvas work? Tell me a little bit more about the solution. What is it? What problem are you solving for SaaS founders and operators today?
Yeah. So the way you think about Rapid Canvas is if I'm a business user and I'm solving a problem, like I'm trying to forecast my revenue for next quarter or trying to identify errors in a bunch of products on my assembly line. Now, all of these are data science related problems. You need to gather data from different places. You need to analyze that data. You need to build some kind of models on that data, and then you get the insights. And typically, what used to happen is you, as a business user, would go to your IT team or engineering team or data science team, say, oh, this is my requirement and this is my kind of need and problem statement. Can you help build this for me? And then I'll consume the insights. I'll give you all my requirements. And invariably, what would happen is these teams would be very small. They could do 2 projects in a quarter, and their list of requirement people wanting their help would be like 20, 30 projects, right? So they would never get to it. And you had these business teams who are like constantly in, oh, I don't control my own destiny and I can't solve my own problems situation, right? What you can do with Rapid Canvas is you can build all of this as a business user. So instead of going to your engineering teams and data science teams and giving them the requirements, you're actually writing up those requirements in Rapid Canvas, right? And literally in Rapid Canvas, code is generated to execute on those requirements, right? And you have a virtual data scientist and a virtual data engineer who's following your commands and building these pieces of code to build exactly the map of how you want things to work and how you want the data to flow and all of that. And there are two components to it, right? There is a visual canvas which has all these modularized blocks that you're almost building a process flow of things, and behind each block is auto generated code. And that code is generated based on a conversational interface with every visual block. So just like you express to Chat GPT what you want done and it does it for you, here you say, oh, I'm trying to build a piece of code that combines these 3 files, finds the index, and then builds a single file with number of rows are the same, right? As file number one. You just say that in English, and all the code is generated in the back end to kind of do that.
Wow.
So, in some sense, you're empowering operational teams, business teams to do things that they would have to wait on data scientists and data engineers to do before, right? And so, or they would have to hire consultants, right? Consulting firms that come and build this for you. Now they can do these things themselves. And this is what Rapid Canvas helps with. Now, assuming that the work of actually writing the code is done automatically, right? Now, the biggest hurdle to overcome for any business user or an operational user is how do I translate my business problem into a technical solution, right? Because implementing the technical solution in the age of generative AI is like pretty straightforward. There are automated agents like us that can do that. So here is where we have a hybrid model, right? So here is where we bring an expert in the loop for our clients. So if
Okay.
you're in solving a supply chain problem, so I have on my staff a data science PhD who understands the business part of supply chain and the technology part of supply chain. And they will work with our clients to design this. Okay, what part of the supply chain problem are you trying to solve? Is this for retail? Is this for CPG? Is this for industrial? What kind of data resources do you have? Do you have data sets? Do you have databases? Do you have flat files? So they work with the user to understand what is available, what is the nature of the business problem, and they help map this to what is the right way to solve this technically from a data science standpoint. And once that's mapped out, everything else is can be done by the business user just working with the platform. So
That's
we have this
great.
sort of hybrid model, and I'm happy to talk more about it. And this is this term that you hear a lot nowadays called service as a software. Not software as a service, but it's service
Right.
as a software.
We've
Uh,
come full circle.
yeah,
I think
come
that
full
that's
circle, right?
fascinating. Yeah, to think about that, you have a digital workforce, but then you have the expert support working with operations and the business unit leader to really understand how would this be implemented technically. So it's really getting the true power of AI, not just guessing or hoping or just the way that we think about it. If here's the way I see it and what I want on the other end, but having somebody help walk through that and translate that into to what does that look like? What really are the requirements and really understanding? Have you thought about looking at it this way? And that industry and the domain expertise is so valuable in that process and being able to make sure that what you get on the other end is what you expect.
Absolutely. I think for the longest time, right, we have folks who have can build elegant technology solutions, but it may or may not solve the business problem. Or
Right.
you thought you would get some ROI, but you get a different ROI, right? So being able to frame this upfront, and part of this services as a software mindset is you and the client are tied at the hip with the outcomes. It's very outcome oriented, right? Yes, you build this amazing piece of technology. Is it delivering the outcome or not? And if it's not, like, we both have to figure out what we need to do to get there, right? If you were expecting a 5x ROI and we just got like 1.2x, okay, we need to loop back and tweak things and experiment and do some A/B testing and see what else we can change. So we are, in some sense, joined at the hip with our clients in ensuring that the outcomes are what we all perceive they should be when we started off designing this problem. But yeah, I think that's where this the notion of service as a software, that's where this world is headed in a post AI world.
Yeah. I love that you really focus on the outcome. It is about the benefit. It's not just about cool tech, but it's that outcome. And I think it also helps leaders overcome maybe the fear of adopting AI or maybe the friction inside the organization because now it's not just best guess, it's actually a guided process. And I think that's a very different experience.
Correct. Because imagine if you are a C-level person today at a company, you have this damned if you do, damned if you don't. Everybody's
Right.
doing AI. So if you don't do AI, your board is going to be like asking you this question every board meeting.
Right.
If you do AI, you're like, I don't quite know where to start, how to start, what to expect, which is the right problem, what ROI should I get. And so you don't want to like over invest unless you have a good sense of what to expect out of this whole thing. And so you have to find a way to, because people are so motivated to do something, get them in a direction where they can do something, but they have a very high degree of confidence when they take that first step that they're going to be rewarded with a good
Yeah.
business outcome.
Yeah. That's good. I think a lot of founders think that AI is either expensive or inaccessible, or it's one of those things that's out there. Maybe there's some small use cases, but to really get the power out of it, you'd have to have data pipelines, and we need a data warehouse, and we need all this other stuff. How are you democratizing that AI for companies without big in house data science teams and a bunch of expense?
Yeah, you're right. Like when people talk about AI, right, the view is very narrow, right? It's one chat GPT interface or one model that gives me a prediction.
Right,
We say like that part of the entire technology is less than 10% of what is required to bring it all together. 90% is not that one interface or that one model. It's like
right,
everything
right.
that needs to happen before that can be built, right?
Yeah,
And so to your point, this is what we do at RapidCanvas is like this entire process, what I call data engineering, is make it a very natural language kind of process. Oh, I need to read these three tables from my Snowflake. That should be a pure natural language thing. Okay, in Snowflake, I need to read these three tables. Or it should be one click where it's connect to Snowflake, put your credentials, you're good to go. So
Yeah.
that it should be that easy to pull the data. Or, man, I have all my financial statements, but they're PDFs. Now, how do I convert a PDF and put that into tables in the database? Like, that is not your problem. You should just be able to say, look, I have a PDF. There are 15 tables in this PDF. Extract those tables and load them for me. It should be that simple, right? So this is now the data ingestion part, right? And so all of that in the platform is a natural language or one click, right? And that's our goal. Everything should be either a natural language or one click. So you do that, then you get your data in, and then it becomes about massaging and stitching the data and transforming the data. Again, you should be just doing that using a natural language flow. Combine these two files or find the statistical relation between two columns. Like you should just state that in English and you get back either an answer or a modified data set. So we don't just think about AI in terms of the model or the one interface. We think about it as an end to end process, going all the way from wherever your data resides, all the way to how you need to consume the output in a business friendly way of that entire setup. So this is why making this an end-to-end process is super important, because to your point, 90% of the work is not the model or that one interface, it's what happens before. And our job is to make that as easy, as simple, and as frictionless as possible for non-engineers and non-data scientists.
Yeah, you're describing the process, and I'm just listening to it. I'm like, that's magic. That is just amazing to think about that you could take a PDF, unstructured data, and be able to pull that into something and actually do something with that as without having the technical expertise. That's magic.
It is. And but this is what generative AI has made it easy for us. And it's one of the areas that is the biggest beneficiary is like this back office kind of operations, right? Where people were moving data through spreadsheets, they were hand copy pasting things from PDFs. It's just, and by the way, nobody wants to do this work. It's not like you're taking away work that people love doing, right? This is work that
Right.
nobody wanted to do anyways in the first place, right? By making it simple and automated and user friendly for the teams that were tasked to do it, it's just a whole different ballgame now.
Yeah. Let's go back to Simility. What were some of the hardest lessons you learned as a first time founder, and how did those shape how you built Rapid Canvas?
Yeah, being a rookie founder is a hard is a very hard life. So some of the lessons, right? And this depends on the like where you're coming from before you started the company. So I came from a very technical background. And so the entire go to market motion and building an engine that goes from 0 to 1, right? In terms of revenue, right? 0 to 1
Right.
million. Not only was that like completely alien to me, it's like I had never done it before in any shape, way, or form. Not even 1 to 10, 10 to 100, nothing. I
Wow.
knew engineering, I knew product, I knew operations. I did not know sales, marketing, any of that, right? So it was my first exposure to that. And I think two things I learned from it, right? Number one is nothing is impossible, right? You just pick your area of focus, right? My focus is I'm going to learn the go to market process, right? I'm never going to be an expert at it, right? But I'm going to learn it enough that I can build the engine that we need at this company without hiring experts or without hiring people who are seasoned. Because in the early days, you can't pay enough to hire all these smart people to come support. You need
Right.
to wear multiple hats. So to me, that part was very important. I think the second thing I learned is going from 0 to 1 is like extremely hard, right? Both from a building a product or building a go to market engine. And Most people have learned this skill in the world where there is something in place and you optimize it.
Right.
Most people don't go from, oh, there is nothing here and you build it, right? So even if you ask other people for advice, they'll give you advice, but their vantage point is they came in and a company was at 10 million, they took it to 30. Okay, great. But
Very
getting to
different.
10 is a hard part. Right? In fact, getting to one is a hard part. And most people who know how to go from zero to one want to go back and become founders. They rarely end up working somewhere else. So you don't
Right.
have huge amount of folks that you could hire to go from zero to, so you need to figure this out as a founder, right? Like how do you go from zero to one? And then once you're at like single digit millions, you can hire others and they can come
Sure.
help you scale that, right? But to me, zero to one is hard. And you have nobody, like you can't lean on too many people. You need to do your own experiments and figure that out. And that gets easier the second time around because now I know from the first time what I learned. Uh,
Right.
so second
Right.
time around it gets easier, but it's never like super easy. It's always hard.
Sure. And you mentioned when you do that, a lot of times the founders do go back and they start another one, which you've done. But then you also transitioned into corporate leadership after the PayPal acquisition. So you're there. So how did that inform your thinking as a startup CEO? And what lessons did you learn there that you carried forward? What if a leadership book and a Netflix drama had a baby? That is The Captain's Keys, Storms, Emotional Wreckage, and a surprisingly practical leadership system that one CEO called the owner's manual and never got for 20 years of leadership. Here is the brutal truth. You're probably drowning in LinkedIn connections while starving for real relationships. I hear it all the time. Most leaders are exhausted from playing the lone hero, and it's killing both your results and your sanity. The Captain's Keys reveals a new leadership framework, the stability matrix, four specific relationships that prevent burnout while multiplying your impact. And this isn't just theory. It's a system that I've used to scale companies and taught over 1,000 executive leaders. So grab your copy today at thecaptainskeys.com, Amazon, or choose your own adventure, print, ebook, or audio. Stop drowning alone and build your stability matrix.
I think part of what was helpful for me is I went from Google to a startup.
Hmm.
So I I had the understanding of how to work in a big company setup. Because a lot of people they have a hard time because they either work only at big companies or they work their entire life at early stage or
Right.
mid-sized companies. So I could go back and forth because I had been at a bigger setup. So I knew how to deal with large corporate structures and how to get your point across the table, how to make sure you get what you want to keep running your team smoothly and making sure they have the right resources to execute all of that. But the interesting part, one of the things during our acquisition by PayPal, and I think we were in a fortunate position because PayPal made the offer. It's not like we were looking to sell. So we could ask for a lot of things. A lot of people negotiate like price and things like that. We negotiated autonomy, right? Okay,
That's good.
we need an X amount of money to run the business. We will give you 10x growth or 20x growth, and this is a trajectory. But what we want in return is to keep this team together as one unit and let it run independently unless we aren't doing what you expected us to do and deliver the goals. And to PayPal's credit, they let us do that for at least 2 out of the 3 years. And so while it was a transition, you still had to go to a lot of meetings and present and
Right.
create decks. For the most part, it's okay, here's a check for the whole year. This is your budget. Go keep doing what you were doing. You're just now a part, you have a different brand, but you have the same team. You don't have to worry about funding rounds anymore. Keep building. And by the way, anybody you want as a customer, PayPal already has them as a customer. You just pick up the phone and call them. You don't have to sell to them. They're already a customer, right?
That's a
So
great place to be.
that's a great place to be. You have every single person you wanted to sell to was a captive customer. You just had to upsell them rather than build that sales from scratch. So I think it helps negotiating that upfront. It helped that I had come from a big company, so I understood how these things worked. And credit to PayPal for giving us the autonomy And the biggest beneficiary of the autonomy was them because they got that growth, which if they had tried to micromanage, probably would have been hard to get.
Oh, without a doubt. I think that happens way too often. Big companies acquire small ones and then you just crush the thing that made them really good to start with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, why would you
And
buy
they don't
this
get the
expensive
value.
car and just go wreck it the next day?
No, that's really smart. And having the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience to be able to navigate that environment because it's so different in a big company like that than a small one or a startup or where you were the number one and now you're one of 20,000.
For sure. No, I think people struggle with that. And um, fortunately for me, I can go back and forth. So my natural inclination is to do this. So I could come back, but also these exits give you the financial flexibility to be able to do that, right?
Sure.
But this is my passion, right? Building companies, growing startups, working on wild ideas.
I love it. Love it. What's maybe one mistake, either technical or hiring or product related, that taught you a lesson that you still use today?
From Simility or from RapidCanvas?
Anywhere along the journey.
Yeah, I for founders, I have a sort of few lessons, right? And this is mostly from my first time. Some of them, even second time, you need to relearn. uh,
I'm in that boat. Yeah, multiple times, multiple lessons. Like I should have learned that the first time, but yeah.
yeah. And I always keep repeating this. George W. Bush had this, he used to always mess up the phrase like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So I try to remember that I shouldn't make the same mistake twice. I think hiring to me is like a big area. And one of the mistakes people make is like having having somebody in a role is better than keeping that role open. But if you have the wrong person in the role, they suck up time and energy from other people around them.
Yeah.
So that role might be a net positive, but for your company, it's a net negative. And so I think it's not very intuitive because it's, oh yeah, you know what, I didn't get quite my I can't find my first choice of person X. So I'm just going to compromise and take somebody who's 60% there and they're really good. It's not like they're bad, right? They're way above average, they're top quartile, but it's not quite the perfect fit because you need so many things. You need somebody who can hustle, you need somebody who can be scrappy, you need somebody who can, like at a startup, like everybody is like a unicorn that you have to hire. So you tend to compromise because you don't find that many unicorns. And the
Right.
moment you compromise, you think, oh, I have somebody now, so I don't have to worry about that role. Let's move to the next one. But you do have to worry.
Yes.
So not making those compromises are like super important. Force yourself to double down and try to find that unicorn rather than making the compromise and saying, okay, let's just get somebody on board and then go find other roles that I need to fill. The other thing is in some roles, it's very hard to know like whether you person you hired is the right one or not because only with experience they can't really pull this off after they have worked in the situation for a while. And in those cases, I think parting ways sooner is better than just trying to course correct because it doesn't benefit anybody. You're not letting that person grow to their full potential, and at the same time, you're harming the company. So
Yeah.
the sooner you can
Yeah.
make that judgment, the better. Of course, don't have a knee jerk reaction, but at the same time, once it's super obvious, don't delay the inevitable.
Yeah.
To me, those are the biggest things, right? The people around you are going to make or break this startup. And so
Absolutely.
be very, very, very careful who you hire and who you retain and how that shapes your company.
Yeah. What's been your experience of the scaling stage where you have the initial team very entrepreneurial and it starts to grow? And have you seen that people will grow with you, or do people hit a cap and you need to replace them at some point? What's been your experience there?
You have both, right? Some people can grow throughout, and some people just they are good at one thing at one stage, and they might not translate those skills to the next stage, right? And sometimes you need to get people in the next stage who are better at scaling because you need to put processes in place, you need to have some hygiene in place. Like early stage startup, like 20 people, everything is tribal knowledge.
Right.
You can talk to anybody, you can get on a meeting, you can get a team all hands, like a company all hands, and like 20 people. And you can
Right.
make decisions in that all hands. Oh, you do this, and that's it. When you have 50 people, 100 people, 200, that no longer works. There have to be mechanisms in place. So some people can grow through multiple phases. Some people can maybe do one or two, but can go beyond that. And they like to go back and start from scratch in a different startup in the same the early stage and take it later. So you just have to identify. There is no right answer. I do think it's very person by person specific.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is everywhere. Some of it is replacing people, some of it is replacing technology, but I think trust is still a barrier. How do you lead conversations with customers who are maybe skeptical or maybe they've been burned by AI hype?
Yeah. So few things that top of mind people have, right? Anxiety around the embarking on an AI kind of project or AI transformation or what have you. Couple of them have to do with the business aspect of it. Am I going to get my ROI? Do I know everything I need to do to pick the right partner to work with us on this? Because everybody's just pitching the hell out of AI right now.
Yes.
And people are like,
Yes.
how do I sift from this noise and get to the signal, right?
What's real and what's not?
What's real and what's not?
Yeah,
I'm like, it's very hard to know.
it is.
Um, and then, like, realistically, what can we accomplish? Let's say we pick the right initiative, we pick the right partner. A lot of this is like groundbreaking stuff. Like maybe it hasn't been done before to this extent, so you really don't know what you can expect in the outcome until you get to the end state sometimes. And
Mhm.
so how do you maximize the potential of the people and the tools to get to that outcome, right? So that's on the business part. Those are the anxieties and uncertainties folks have. And then there's a slew of them for generative AI on the technology part. Is, oh, am I going to upload all my financial statements
Right.
into OpenAI to ask all these questions? And then OpenAI has all my data. What happens there, right? Is that deleted? Does that get stored?
Right.
Is that, even though it may not be stored, will it be used in a response somewhere else when somebody else asks a question and part of it is used to create that response? Like all these things are top of mind for people just from a intellectual property and data protection standpoint. That's
Yeah.
one bucket. There is another bucket around reliability and transparency of what this model is doing. Can you forecast for me the next quarter what my sales is going to look like? And here's the sales from my last quarter. Yeah, you get a forecast back. How do I trust this? Why do I trust this? And by the way, if you ask that question today, you'll get one answer. If you ask that same question tomorrow, you'll get a different answer.
Absolutely. And they may be really different.
They may be really different because
Yeah.
by the nature of large language models, they are the responses are constructed based on probabilities of the next word and the
Correct.
next word and the next word. So no two responses will be constructed the exact same way. So the idea that you even expect it to have the same answer is just flawed.
Right.
Right. So as a partner, as an AI partner to companies, we have to account for all of these things, right? So for example, in our case, when you tell us that your data should never leave your environment, it never leaves your environment, right? So we would create a synthetic looking data from your data. We would ask the LLM model to say, hey, here is an example of the data I have. I'm trying
Ah,
to analyze this
nice.
data. And instead of saying, analyze this data for me, we say, give me a piece of code that I can bring locally and run on this data.
Oh, that's good.
It's a level of indirection between the large language model and your data, which is very important for a lot of enterprises. Everybody's worried about their intellectual property, their data.
Right.
The second thing this does is because now you have a piece of code, you know the logic.
And you have consistency as
You have
well.
consistency as well, right?
Yeah.
Repeatability, consistency, transparency. Now, LLMs are good enough to say, hey, here's a piece of code, explain to me what it does. It's very good at explaining that. So you have the logic and an English explanation what it does. And so if tomorrow, let's say you're issuing credit and you deny credit to someone because of this code, and your compliance officer comes and asks you, like, hey, why did we deny credit? Like fair lending practices is like the I need to tell the regulators. You can't say the LLM told me to do so. No, I have here is my piece
Right.
of logic that I used to make this decision. Now, you may like or not like my logic, but it's very clear to you and auditable why we have that logic, right? So, from a technology standpoint, it's important, right? Because people just think you can slap a UI around foundational models and create a product. It's like you need to account for all these anxieties, which is why people are afraid of embarking on AI projects, right? So, from a technology standpoint, we account for all of this and we have built for that. From a business standpoint, we have to compute a hypothetical ROI upfront, what you can expect. We have to have a good design, which is where we have the expert in the loop. And lastly, we have to be in it together. Like our pricing is based on the outcome. So if you don't get the outcome, guess what? We don't get paid. If you get a third of the outcome, we get a third of what we thought we should have gotten paid. And so the business anxieties can also be mitigated with that, right? But we have to find ways. I don't think people can just say, I this AI is so new and so uncertain, I can't do it, right? Because you have to do it, but you have to do it in a way that you're comfortable with it. And I know this because a decade ago, we had these same arguments about cloud. People are like, I'm not going to go to the cloud. I have my data center, I'm
Right.
secure. Now everybody's in the cloud. So it took a while
Right.
to overcome the anxiety and the objections and the fears and all of that, right? So the faster we can build products that help people overcome these challenges and anxieties around AI, the faster people adopt AI. Yeah, I don't think people are quite questioning, that AI is actually going to be beneficial. It's just, man, there's a lot of things I don't know. And the more somebody can give me assurances that this can be more known, more reliable, more understandable, more where I know I'm going to get the outcome I want, I'll be more comfortable doing it. This is where I think as AI products and AI vendors, we can make a huge difference.
Yes. Yes. Well, a founder's trying to figure out if AI should be part of their 12-month roadmap. Obviously, it should. Yeah, but they're trying to figure out where does it fit into the organization. I think there's a lot of confusion around that and a lot of uncertainty. What is the first question they should ask themselves or their organization in trying to figure out where the best fit is?
That's a great question. So we see a lot of open sky kind of thinking in this. And one of the first things we do with a lot of our clients is not try to shoehorn, like AI shouldn't be like a hammer looking for a nail.
Exactly.
So we do like a 4-hour workshop where we're like, ignore AI for a second. Let's go through the top business challenges you're trying to tackle just from an operational standpoint. Like, where are you spending way too much time in operations, or where are you finding it hard to kind of plan for your business, sales, or like inventory, or what have you? Let's just list down all the business problems. And what would your ideal state be? Like, instead of 50 people in your back office, would you rather there were 20? Or instead of you having a forecast that's like maybe 25% deviation between what you thought and what happened versus you need like a 5% deviation, right? So let's think through, like, from a business standpoint, what are the pain points or the areas that you're concerned about, and what kind of ideal outcomes do you expect? And then we list down all the different AI techniques that can actually help in those areas. And then you narrow down, okay, I think what you're looking for is a predictive maintenance that's going to provide the most bang for your buck in the manufacturing process, or an assembly line optimization that's going to provide the most bang for your buck for the problem you're trying to solve. So you could come to me and say, look, I'm managing wind turbines and my major cost is repair. And it's because wind turbines are in a remote location. We have to send crews when things break down. I'm not making money when the turbine is not working. If I could predict before the turbine breaks down, I would save millions of dollars. But that's a
Yeah.
business problem. So there are AI solutions, right? And so we work with a wind turbine manufacturer where we're able to predict 45 days in advance with 83% accuracy if something is going to break or not. That's
Wow.
incredibly valuable to them.
Yes, absolutely.
But it starts with an operational problem like, oh man, we're spending way too much money on these repair and maintenance and operations. And is there a way to be proactive about identifying that and addressing that upfront rather than reacting to breakdowns? So I think thinking, because anything is possible now with AI, think about
Right.
what are the big problems you want to solve and are there realistic AI applications that I can put in those areas. That's how I would recommend founders or C level folks think about how AI matters in their work.
Love it. Where can people learn more about you and about Rapid Canvas online?
Yeah, so rapidcanvas.ai is the best place to go. We have a great number of resources on the website just about how to go about doing AI, um, how other customers have benefited. Folks can easily find us there. And of course, my LinkedIn profile, Rahul Pangam. Find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. Always happy to work with other founders and folks who want to talk about AI.
Outstanding. This has been such a great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thanks a lot, Jeff, and always great to speak with you.
You as well. Thanks again, Rahul, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Rahul and Rapid Canvas at rapidcanvas.ai. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel at Champion Leadership. Thought leaders share. So share this episode with your smartest friends. It's one of those conversations they'll want to rewind and dissect. And, they're going to hear this and they'll know that they are your smartest friend. Maybe they'll send it back to you. Who knows? Everyone who shares this week gets a cupcake frosted with ambition, filled with hustle, and sprinkled with Series A term sheets. 0 calories, infinite traction. How do you sell to banks and scale to fintech at the same time? Next up, Stacy Bishop reveals what 25 years in banking and B2B fintech sales have taught her about selling smarter and helping founders close with confidence. After that, we hear from Scott Kate, Microsoft and Amazon alum turned tech founder. He is reinventing link routing for marketers with 301.pro and sharing what 3 decades of internet innovation have taught him about product led growth and customer insight. I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.